Welcome to the Untold Stories. Deep in the West Feliciana parish of Louisiana, tucked into a sharp 18,000-acre bend of the Mississippi River, lies a place that has been called the Alcatraz of the South. But to the men who live there, it is simply known as the farm. This is the Louisiana State Penitentiary, better known as Angola. It is the largest maximum security prison in the United States, larger than the island of Manhattan. But Angola isn't just a prison. It is a living monument to America's darkest history. For over 150 years, this soil has been soaked in the blood of the enslaved and the incarcerated. Today, we're looking past the barbed wire to uncover the stories the walls won't tell. From the prison's transition from a slave plantation to the bloodiest prison in the South, and the chilling legends that still haunt the dormitories at night. The name Angola isn't just a random choice. Before the Civil War, this land was a massive cotton plantation owned by Isaac Franklin, one of the most successful slave traders in American history. It was named after the country of Angola, where many of the people enslaved on this very soil were stolen from. When the Civil War ended and slavery was technically abolished by the 13th Amendment, the land didn't find peace, it found a loophole. The 13th Amendment outlawed slavery except as punishment for a crime. By 1880, a former Confederate officer named Samuel Lawrence James purchased the land and began what was known as the convict lease system. James would lease prisoners from the state of Louisiana to work his fields. Conditions were so brutal that historians say the mortality rate was higher than it was during slavery. Inmates were worked from dawn to dusk under the lash, and they died. They were simply buried in unmarked graves in the fields they were tilling. When the state finally took control in 1901, the culture of the farm was already set. It was a place where the overseers simply became wardens and the chains were traded for handcuffs. By the mid-20th century, Angola had earned a new nickname, the bloodiest prison in the South. In the 1950s, conditions were so horrific with rampant stabbings and systemic abuse that 31 inmates famously sliced their own Achilles tendons in a desperate protest to get the world's attention. The prison was governed not by just guards, but by the trustees, which were inmates who were given guns and authority over other prisoners. This created a Darwinian nightmare. Violence was the only currency. In the open dormitories, there were no cells, just rows of beds when men slept with one eye open, knowing that a shank could appear at any moment. It was in the environment that the Angola Three emerged. Albert Woodfox, Herman Wallace, and Robert King were members of the Black Panther Party who began organizing inside the prison walls to protest these brutal conditions and racial segregation. In 1972, following the murder of a prison guard, Woodfox and Wallace were placed in solitary confinement. They stayed there for over 40 years. Albert Woodfox, released in 2016, served 43 years in a 6-by-9-foot cell, the longest period of solitary confinement in U.S. history. This story, or rather their story, remains a global symbol of the psychological warfare waged within the American penal system. But beyond the documented history, there are the stories that the officials don't acknowledge. These are the untold stories, whispered between inmates. One of the most persistent legends is that of the bottom. These are rumored tunnels and sub-basements dating back to the 1800s. Inmates whisper that during the plantation era, these tunnels were used to move difficult people away from the public eye. Today, the legend says that when the Mississippi River rises and the land becomes saturated, you can hear muffled echoes coming from beneath the floors, the sounds of the lost, who were never recorded in the prison's official logs. Then there is the chilling phrase found carved into the brick of the older camps: the river never forgets. It is a reference to the Mississippi, which borders the prison on three sides. Throughout the decades, the river has flooded the prison multiple times. Each time the water recedes, it's said to unearth bones from the old point. The original cemetery, where thousands of nameless prisoners were buried in cardboard boxes in the late 20th century, an investigation supposedly found modern-day shackles among the century-old bones, sparking rumors that unofficial burials were still happening well into the modern era. Despite the darkness, Angola is a place of strange contradictions. It is home for a world-renowned inmate hospice program where prisoners, many of whom will never leave the gates alive, volunteer to care for their dying peers. It is a rare moment of humanity in a place built on punishment. On the other hand, there is the Angola Prison Rodeo. Every October, thousands of tourists pay to watch inmates compete in guts and glory, where men try to snatch a poker chip off the head of a charging bull. To some, it is a chance for inmates to earn money and as a sense of pride. To others, it is a modern-day gladiatorial spectacle that mirrors the exploitation of the 1800s. Today, Angola is trying to change its image, but the ghosts of the past are hard to bury. With over 70% of its population serving life sentences, it remains a place where thousands of men go to die. Whether it is the legacy of the plantation, the tragedy of the Angola 3, or the whispers of the bottom, one thing is certain. The story of Angola is the story of America, which is uncomfortable, complex, and deeply unfinished.